Let us go ahead and get started here. Let's see. Okay, let's open with prayer and we'll dive right in. Father, we thank you for the day and for your goodness to us. Father, I ask that you would guide in all that we do. Help the time now that we take to look into your word, to see some of the principles pulled from it. God, help that time to be profitable and beneficial for us. Father, we will at different times go through different storms in life. Father, difficult times, we know that you are always with us. And Father, as we look at that and focus on that and pull principles for life out of that story that we have here, God, help us to always have that faith, that confidence that we can trust you in all things at all times. I pray that you would, Father, just speak to our hearts, we ask. In your name, amen. All right, before we dive in here, I was thinking this morning, wouldn't it be nice if there was a Bible that had all of the best features of all of the different, not types or versions, but all of the different printings? I mentioned before, just a couple weeks ago, I think, I like the Thompson chain. That's not what I've got a brand new one at home. I just haven't gotten it out of the box yet. I like the one that I have here, especially for teaching, because it has, and I've told you before, it's full color, so it's got color. Did you catch that, Lynn? It's full color, my Bible is. I've got color maps, not at the back. I've got color maps contained within the text. So if it's talking, I'm at Acts 27. If I turn back one page, there's Paul's voyage. Wouldn't it be nice if they could incorporate all of those features into one Bible? Of course, you'd need a wheelbarrow to bring it to church, but it would be nice if they could get all of that in one place. The other thing I've been thinking about the last 2 weeks is this series is flying by. This is one past the halfway now. It's 10 weeks, and this is week 6. So looking ahead to what comes next, I have more with the names of God that we may go to, or I may go right into the next series. I'm looking right now at possibly going into the book of Colossians, looking at the 4 chapters of Colossians for a few weeks. It would be more than 4 weeks. There's a lot tucked in there. But considering that, thinking about that, I have to make a decision sometime soon here because I need to order whatever I'm going to use and get that in. But that's kind of the direction I'm going right now. All right. We have our map, full color. Of course, the colors are limited to 4, but full color map here, kind of showing the voyage as Paul traveled from Jerusalem up to Caesarea. That's where he was held and had trial before Felix Festus Agrippa. From there, the journey started. And we've talked about a number of times, late in the season. Now, one of the things I saw just this week in doing some reading on this was there's a very good chance that the ship owner gets a bonus for delivering grains late in the season. Which makes sense then when we look at Paul saying, hey, this probably wouldn't be a good idea, and they push on anyhow because he doesn't want to lose his bonus. And so there's a number of little pieces from history that as we read, we see, oh, that helps make some sense. Why would they not listen? It's not just that they knew better, it's that they wanted more. And so it's kind of interesting. Mentioned ships. They had a couple of different possibilities with ships. This is not an exact detailed artist rendering. This is simply what some of the ships in the Mediterranean would look like. Notice different layers or levels within. And one thing you'll notice, there's not a whole lot of space for people. Typically, the people slept on top, just sprawled out across the top. All the cargo space was kept for cargo. They didn't make money delivering the people. They made money delivering the cargo. And so you had the ship, and as it sails, some things that we know, you knew, wooden ship, sails for power. This is not a military ship, even though there are 276 people on board. a number of those soldiers. You have the centurion and all of his people, which would number at least 100. So there's a lot of people on board, but its primary purpose is to deliver the cargo. That's why it's there. That's what it's doing. If you'll recall from early in the story, as we were reading in the narrative in the beginning, the centurion was able to find voyage or find passage. It wasn't as if he went to a military ship that was sitting there waiting for him. And so their whole purpose is to fill this boat with as much goods as they can. Review, just looking quickly at the titles of the lessons, the last 5, and I'm just going to run down through these, not even going to read through them, except until we get to the last. Last week we looked at jettison hindering cargo. Get rid of those things in life that are hindering us. Obviously, we were in Acts 27. If you want to turn there, that's the passage that we'll be in. But we spent some time looking at Hebrews 12, where life was compared to a race, and Paul said, get rid of those weights and the sins which doth so easily beset us. Get rid of those things that trip us up. Paul, in his epistles, writing to the different churches, a couple of times used a phrase that we call put off and put on. He said, put off these things, get rid of these, put on these things, add these character traits, these elements to your life. Paul was all about, hey, get rid of the things that are in the way and add in those things that are going to benefit you eternally. And so last week we looked at that idea, get rid of the things that are hindering us. Staying within that idea of introduction here, sometimes when you have done everything, it's just not enough. Ever been there? Now we're looking primarily at storms of life, but there are lots of situations in life where we find that to be the case. We do everything we can, and everything we can just isn't enough. And sometimes when we take a step back, realize that's part of the problem. We're trying to do it. Look at verse 20, Acts 27, verse 20. This is just ahead of the passage for this week. But look at this. And we read this last week. And when neither sun nor stars in many days appeared. Okay. They didn't have artificial lighting other than lamps and lanterns, fire, which they would have used. Keep in mind, however, fire on a wooden boat is not necessarily a good thing if you don't keep it contained. Okay? So, neither sun nor stars in many days appeared. No small tempest lay on us. So, it was cloudy and windy. And on the sea, that produces waves. So, there's a big storm, and it's many days. Look at this last statement here. All hope that we should be saved was then taken away. Luke is writing this, inspired by the Spirit, and says, we were in trouble and everybody knew it. And there was no way out. Sometimes when you've done everything, it's just not enough. Last week we talked, they tossed all the cargo over. They're trying to lighten the ship. And it's still not enough. There's some points from that one statement here. All hope that what are they going to do? They can't send out an SOS. There's no radios. They can't call for help. It's late in the season. There aren't that many ships out there. All hope, not some, they had nowhere else to go. And notice we. This is Luke. Luke, who's traveled with Paul, who knows Paul, and this we may very well include Paul. At this point, Paul has told them, we should stay in harbor. And they said, nah, don't think so. And now they've been in this storm for many days. And now there's no way out. And all hope that we should be saved was then taken away. They had nowhere else to go. Now, keep in mind, through all of this, Paul's a man just like you and I. Paul is a man of great faith. Next point that I've got there. He's a man of great faith, but he's still a man. He has encountered danger before. He has encountered physical troubles before. He's been beaten, he's been stoned, he's been left for dead. He has gone through a lot. So Paul's just like you and I, and all hope that we should be saved was then taken away. And Paul's struggling. Something else that we see here in introduction as we get started here, apparently this is not a quick-moving storm. We have sometimes storms that they blow through, and they blow through in a couple of hours, violent storms, then they're gone. This one here, it categorized many days. A couple of verses earlier, Luke is very precise. He says, on the third day. So, I mean, this is not just a 1, 2, or 3 day storm. This has taken a while. That boat might be big, might have Roman soldiers on it. It is no opponent for a storm. The storm's just going to take and beat it up. And it's beating it up pretty severely. And in life, aren't there some storms that seem to go on forever? You ever had a storm in life, a trial, a tribulation in life, and it seemed, is this ever going to stop or end? Some storms just seem to go on forever. And as we saw there in verse 20, there are times when we can't see the sun through the clouds. We're looking, and it's just not there. So let's dive into the notes for today. First of all, see change. See change. A quote from John Newton that you have there. Though neither sun nor stars were seen, Paul knew the Lord was near, and faith preserved his soul serene when others shook with fear. We don't know. Paul may have been one of the we and felt as if we're going down, but Paul probably was not running around throwing his arms in the air, yelling and screaming and saying, oh no, woe is me. Paul understood, and we see this in a number of different places, that if this is what God has for me, then this is what God has for me. It's interesting here, and we've talked about this a couple of times. Look at verse 21 as we get started with the verses for today. We'll go ahead and read these, just a few, 21 through 26. But after long abstinence, Paul's just let everything go here for a while. He stood forth in the midst of them and said, Sirs, ye should have hearkened unto me and not loosed from Crete, and to have gained this harm and loss. And we've talked about this a couple of times. Paul, he says, I told you so. He did not say, ha ha, I told you so. Remember, he didn't lose his opportunity to be heard. He kept his attitude right. It's not only what you say, it's oftentimes how you say. And he says, I told you we shouldn't have gone this way. We should have stayed in harbor. And now I exhort you, okay, time out. Go back to verse 20. Neither sun nor stars in many days appeared. No small tempest lay on us. All hope was taken away that we should be saved. All right, now, verse 22. And now I exhort you to be of right. Are you sure about that? Who made you the meteorologist today? I mean, right? I exhort you to be of good cheer. Okay, now stop and think. Why did he start this with, I told you we should have stayed? Because he wants them to understand he has something to say, and what he says is going to come to pass. I told you we should have stayed, and now you know we should have stayed. Now I'm going to tell you, what does it say? For there shall be no loss of any man's life among you, but of the ship. Now he says, not one of you is going to die. He told us we should have stayed. Now he's telling us nobody's going to die. Can we trust him? It's not that he's saying, ha, 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 you should have listened to me. He's saying, hey, see where we are? I have something to say, and you need to hear it. Look at that last statement. But of the ship, not one of you is going to die. There shall be no loss. The ship will be lost. Look at the next verse. For there stood by me this night the angel of God, whose I am and whom I serve. I am God's, I serve him. His angel came and talked to me last night. And here's what he said. Fear not. Fear not, Paul, for thou must be brought before Caesar. He has, and we've talked about this, he has a divine appointment. And God will make sure that he is there for his appointment. And lo, God hath given thee all them that sail with thee. I'm going to make sure that you get to Rome, and all those people with you are going to get there also. So Paul says, we're in the midst of this storm. Things are bad. There's no way out of it. But we will survive. The boat's not going to, sorry, Captain, but we will survive. And that's important. And then he tells them, and here's how I know that. I serve God, I follow him, and here's what God told me. There's a lot there. When it says in verse 20 that all hope that we should be saved, that was probably prior to the angel's visit. Because it's the next day, appears to be, that Paul stands up and says, we're going to be okay. God reassured Paul, who then reassured the others on board. And Paul reminded them that he should be listened to, but he didn't rub it in that they didn't listen to him. He said, you should have listened to me. Here's the proof. Listen to me this time. And sometimes we need to see the sun with an O through the clouds. When we are going through the storms of life, we need to look for Christ. The Christ who said, I will never leave thee nor forsake thee. The Christ who said he will always be present with us. Things are changing. There's a change here. It's going from storm, storm, storm. We're going to make it. But it doesn't say that the storm stopped right then. Just read through the rest of these couple of verses here. Verse 24, fear not, Paul, thou must be brought before Caesar, and lo, God hath given thee all them that sail with thee. Wherefore, sirs, be of good cheer. Second time he said that. For I believe God that it shall be even as it was told me. Howbeit, we must be cast upon a certain island. We're going to be okay, but we are going to be shipwrecked. But we're going to be okay. Now, not the passage for today, but look at the next couple of words. But when the 14th night was come, they've been in this storm for 2 weeks. This is a biggin. Okay? They have been beaten. They've been tossed to and fro. And this storm seems to have no end. Our next point here, Paul, he reassures them. God told me. As God has said, we can trust him. Another quote, this time from Oswald Chambers. When you are in the dark, listen, and God will give you a very precious message for someone else when you get in the light. God delivered this message to Paul. Paul passed along that good news to the folks on the ship. He helped them to know, hey, here's what God said. Now, God himself sent a message. God himself didn't deliver the message. He sent an angel. But the angel brought the message from God. God sent a message to Paul. It's not as if Paul heard it from somebody else who heard it from somebody else who heard it from somebody else. God sent an angel and said, I want this message delivered to that man right there. God delivered the message. He sent the message straight to Paul. And what was the message? Don't be afraid. You will make your appointment. We've mentioned that. And no one will die. Basically, it's a three-part message. If you wanted to say, be of good cheer, the message to Paul was pretty simple and straightforward. Don't worry. You're going to get where I told you were going to go, and so will everybody else. And then he takes that message and delivers it to the leaders on the ship. Was he able to talk so that everybody on the ship could hear him at the same time? They're in the midst of a storm. I'm going to guess no. Just a guess on my part. But was he able to tell the folks in charge? Absolutely. He's had a discussion with them once before. What did he tell them? He told them, be of good cheer. Twice he tells them that. We don't know. Maybe he needed to reassure them and tell them 3 and 4 times. We don't know. But twice he told them, be of good cheer. And when you stop and think about it, that only makes sense, doesn't it? They're in the midst of this storm. This storm's been going on forever. And he says, hey, there's a brighter day coming. Be of good cheer. He tells them, I believe what God has told me. It will be even as God has said. He didn't say it's going to be, this is what God said, so I think we'll be okay. He told them, this is what God says, and I know that we will be okay. He had complete confidence. And yet he wraps up this part, but we're still going to shipwreck. We're still going to be cast on an island. Hold your place here if you got a bookmark or something there. Hold your place here in Acts 27. Go to Psalm 91. Psalm 91. Let's see here. We'll start at verse 1. We'll just read down probably through verse 11 or so, but we'll start at verse 1. He that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, He is my refuge and my fortress, my God, in Him will I trust. So when we need a safe place to go, there He is. Surely He shall deliver thee from the snare of the fowler and from the noisome pestilence. He shall cover thee with His feathers, and under His wings shalt thou trust. His truth shall be thy shield and buckler. Thou shalt not be afraid for the terror by night, nor for the arrow that flieth by day, nor for the pestilence that walketh in darkness, nor for the destruction that wasteth at noonday. 1,000 shall fall at thy side, and 10,000 at thy right hand, but it shall not come nigh thee. Only with thine eyes shalt thou behold and see the reward of the wicked. Because thou hast made the Lord, which is my refuge, even the Most High, thy habitation. There shall no evil befall thee, neither shall any plague come nigh thy dwelling. For He shall give His angels charge over thee, to keep thee in all thy ways. And it continues on with that idea for just a few more verses. The idea that, hey, there are going to be troublesome days. There's going to be days where things don't go well. I mean, it's talking here about the sickness and disease. It's talking about pestilence. It's talking about war. All different things that are going to take place. God is my deliverer. He's my shield and buckler. He's my refuge. God is the one to whom I can go regardless of what I'm facing. Regardless of the storm, we can go to the Father. He is there to guide and direct and to protect us. Back into the notes there. Sometimes God speaks quietly. Sometimes God speaks loudly. When He speaks, we need to listen for His voice. We need to listen. Sometimes in the midst of the storm, we get so enamored or afraid by the storm that we don't listen to the Father when He speaks to us. He can speak to us through the advice and counsel of a friend, through a message, or through a reading of the Word. He can speak to us as we're meditating and say, God, I don't know what you're doing, but would you help me at this time? And he can give us that comfort. I find it interesting that in the book of John, the Spirit is referred to as the Comforter. Regardless of what we're going through, he is there, and he is able to put his arm around our shoulder and to comfort us, to give us that reassurance. I think it's interesting as we read through the passage in Acts 27, the angel came when all had given up hope. The angel didn't come on day one. The angel came after many days. Everybody had basically resigned themselves to the fact that we're going to go visit Davy Jones' locker. Everybody had resigned them to the fact that we're going to die. And the angel comes to Paul and says, God said, none of you are going to die. The angel came when all had given up hope. It's interesting that even the faithful can lose hope. And perhaps you've been there. Even those who have a close walk with God, when their faith is tried day after day after day and they can't see any way out, we hope it doesn't. But even they can say, God, I don't understand. I don't know where to go. God, are you real? It can happen. Storms can be so severe that there seems no way out. But remember what God has said. God delivers this message, and that message came to pass. This next point, a little bit interesting here. Reading the Post-its. I don't know if you do or not. If you put notes up, it could be a Post-it note, it could be a piece of paper with a magnet. If you put notes up, maybe on the fridge, maybe you've got a magnetic board, maybe you have a whiteboard or a chalkboard that you write notes on. If you write notes, what's the purpose? The purpose is to read the notes. If all you're going to do is write them, you're wasting your time. Josie's in 6th grade now, which is middle school in this place. I used to teach English. Incorporated with English is writing, and I can write a paper. Okay. Don't like to, but I can diagram a sentence too. But I could write a paper. And so Josie's starting to write papers, more than just write a paragraph about. And I was telling her last night, Josie, when you write, you're not writing for you. You're writing for the reader. If they don't understand what you're trying to say, you need to redo it. If you're writing notes, you're not writing them for the moment, you're writing them to see them later. If you put a note up on the fridge, reminder, doctor's appointment on whatever day, it's not for today, it's so that you can look at it later to remember that you have a doctor's appointment. Keep that thought in mind. A quote again. There is a wonderful sense of being in God's presence as you let your mind dwell. We find in Joshua and in other places, meditate. Same idea, as you dwell on his words. And so the question, first of all, do we keep verses of inspiration or encouragement around? Or do we have different things around the house that draw our hearts and minds off of the troubles and onto the Father? And if we do we use them for more than simple decoration? If all they are is decoration, I'll be honest, you wasted your money. If all they are is for decoration, what's the point? If you have verses or biblical statements or sayings, the purpose ought be to draw me back to the Father. And the written word is as sure as the word from an angel. God sent an angel to Paul. Chances are pretty good that God's not sending an angel to you and to me. However, Paul did not have this, and you and I do. We have the written word, and it is as sure as the word of the angel was to Paul. Paul hears the angel, he goes to the leaders on the ship, and he says, I have complete confidence we will all be saved alive, because God said it. And we can look into the Word of God and we can say, you know what, I have complete confidence because God said it. A statement, we're familiar with it, from Psalm 119. Thy word have I hid in mine heart. How does it finish? That I might not sin against thee. Have we hid the word in our heart? If I don't have my Bible with me, do I have my Bible with me? There were books after Korea and Vietnam particularly, but written about prisoners of war who remembered all the verses that they'd learned back when they were kids in Sunday school, and how those verses helped to sustain them as they went through daily torture. The word in our heart is incredibly beneficial. Helps us to get through the storms of life. Go over to Romans 15. Romans 15, not that far away. Right toward the end of the book of Romans. Romans 15 and verse 32. Paul is writing this to the believers in Rome, hence the name. And in verse 32, he says, that I may come unto you with joy by the will of God. At that point, Paul simply had a heartfelt desire. He had an intention. He was going to go to Rome to see these people. He probably had no idea how that voyage was going to be accomplished when he made that statement in Romans 15:32. He wrote of a confidence. He says, that I may come to you. I intend to. I plan to. I want to. He had a confidence that he would go. I doubt that he had any idea how it was going to be accomplished. God accomplishes his plan using methods, means, and materials that are beyond our understanding. God accomplishes his will in ways that we can't grasp. And sometimes because of that, we may start to doubt him. We may start to question him. When Paul appealed to Rome, did he know for sure that he would indeed be sent to Rome? Maybe. Back when he's being heard by Festus, Felix, and Agrippa, and he appeals to Rome, did he know that the end result was that they were going to take him to Rome? Maybe. I don't know how thorough he was in his knowledge of Roman law. He has a desire to get to Rome, we see in Romans 15:32. Maybe he understood at the end of the book of Acts that this is the means but whereby I will get there. I don't know. Maybe he didn't. I don't know. But this is the way that God used to get him there. Now, I don't have it in the notes here, but if Paul had known all that was going to happen, 2 years imprisoned in Caesarea, not Jerusalem, 2 years in Caesarea, before the voyage leaves, if he had known everything, would he have said, God, could I get a different plan, please? Isn't it sometimes a good thing that God doesn't let us know what's going to happen after today until we get to after today? Because if I knew what tomorrow held, I might not want tomorrow. But I can know that my God will be with me. As we think of these different things, let the word speak to your heart. Again, thinking about the idea of Post-its that are up around the house. As we see these thoughts, these inspirational sayings, these quotes, these Bible verses, let them speak to us as you are reading. I don't know about you. I take notes in my Bible. My old Thompson chain that's at home, that's pretty well beat up, the margins are packed full. Underline, different things, tools, methods that I use. let the word speak to your heart. If it speaks to your heart, make note of it somewhere. Write it here. Maybe write it on your bulletin so that when you get home, you can write it on your whiteboard or chalkboard, inspirational. As you hear something that is an encouragement or a blessing to you, don't just say, well, that's interesting, and then go about your merry way. Make note of it so that you can be encouraged by it again later. Let the word speak to your heart. Conclusion. It's interesting. Paul says, God spoke to me, and I believe what he said. We cannot trust what we do not know. People that are going through troubles and trials that do not know God have no anchor. They have nothing to help them in the storms of life. We do. We ought to live like it. We ought to trust the one who's always present with us. Read, study, and meditate. Make the word a significant part of your day. If I am going to trust what God said, then maybe, I'll probably have this coming up here in a moment, I need to know what God said. When the storm raged and the angel came, Paul listened not to the winds, but to the angel. And that's a challenge. Where I work, it's just a little bit loud. It's a lot a bit loud. And so if somebody comes up and they're talking to me in their indoor voice, there's a good chance I can't hear them. There's too much other noise. I don't necessarily want to call it ambient noise. It's not white noise. It's dark noise. It's not quiet. And so if you come up and, hey, can you? If you don't speak up, you might as well be talking to the wall. Paul, all that's going on, this tempest for many days, when the angel comes, Paul heard him. Paul heard what God had to say. Oh, here's something. We can always find someone who says what we want to hear. Are we willing to listen to the one who says what we need to hear? And what I want to hear and what I need to hear are not always the same. Sometimes I need to hear, stop what you're doing, turn around and fix this. And I don't like that. And if you're honest, neither do you. We don't like to be told that we are wrong. But sometimes we need to be told we're wrong. Paul told the captain, the centurion, those in charge, hey, you should have listened, so here's what's going to happen next. And we know they listened because when it came time for, he told them, we're going to be cast on an island. There's going to be a shipwreck. Normal Roman behavior was to kill all the prisoners, because an escaped prisoner meant the soldiers were going to die. And they don't want to die. So let's eliminate that possibility. Kill the prisoners. They didn't, because they heard and believed Paul. Expect God to do what he said. So what did he say? I need to be in the Word. I need to listen. I need to read. We'll see that same thought coming up in a little bit. When going through the storm, remember that there are others also going through the storm. There are very few trials in life that are limited to me and me only. That could be you and your family. It could be you and the extended family. It could be you and your friends, neighbors, and coworkers. I don't know. But there are very few storms of life when I'm the only one in the boat. Often there are others present. And maybe I need to try to encourage them, even if I don't see any way out. Oh, here's one. This one just came to mind as I was putting all this together. Leave work at work. Don't add to the storm. How often is it we go to work and we have a bad day at work, so we come home and make it a bad day for everybody else? Leave work at work. Don't take those frustrations out on your fellow travelers. There are lots of voices related to something we saw just a couple minutes ago. There are lots of voices out there that are clamoring to be heard. Filter who we listen to. Eliminate those that we know are distracting, that we know are just talking to. A couple of interesting points here. Just always remember, the internet doesn't lie. Everything on the internet's true. And these next three should be indented. I didn't catch that when I put the slides together. Remember, if it's in a book, it's got to be true, right? I mean, if they printed it, it must be true. And your friends always have all the answers. They might not know what the question is, but they have the answer. They might not know all the details, but they know what you need to hear. I mean, look at Job. His friends had the answers, right? Now, filter what we listen to. Get down to godly people that can be trusted. Those are the ones that we need to listen to. And then take what we learn and share it with those that are also in the storm. Or maybe we have been through a storm and come out the other side, and now they're going through a storm. Maybe they're not in the same storm, but I have information that can benefit them. Don't be afraid to share what you've learned. I got a bonus thought here, actually, two bonus thoughts. Don't be afraid to put quality thoughts or verses up and around for your meditation. We talked about those Post-it notes. Whether it's on a whiteboard, a chalkboard, whether you put something with a magnet or a Post-it. Not a huge fan of tape. But if you put something up, don't take advantage of it. If you put it up there, if it meant something to you then, let it mean something to you later. Stop and look at it and say, God, help this to be a constant reminder of what I need to do or what you continue to do. Related, in your Bible, underline, highlight, but then go back and read it later. Doesn't do any good to underline and highlight it if you don't look at it again. And then the last, I mentioned that expect God to do what he shows up again here. The last one was, what did he say? This one says, know what he says. Get into the Word, read it, and know it. I can trust him. Look at all the examples of others that have trusted him, and he's not going to take me and say, I'm going to treat you different this time. I'm going to give you a message, and I'm going to sit back and not do anything to make it happen. No, God can be trusted. I need to know what he said so that I know what I need to do. Storms of life, they're there. Some storms are bigger than others, some are longer than others, but the storms are there. God has promised to carry us through those storms. I need to have a relationship with him. I need to be in the Word, to read it, to study it, to know that I can trust him, that he will accomplish his purpose. Father, thank you for your goodness and graciousness to us. Father, I pray that you would help us to know that you are with us as we go through these storms. Help us to sense your closeness, your abiding spirit. Father, help us to be in constant communication, continual fellowship with you. Father, I pray that you'll be with the service to come, be with Pastor, give him the words to say. Speak to our hearts. Father, teach us what we need that we can live for you each day we ask. In your name, amen. Have a great day.